with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the last session of the day 2. I would like to invite Navkendar Singh, Research Director, India and South Asia, IDC, to lead the panel discussion on 5G device ecosystem, a key ingredient of 5G success story. Over to you, Mr. Singh.
In 2021, globally around 560 million 5G devices were shipped. And this is set to go to about 1 billion in another 3 to 4 years. Now we know China and Korea and some of the other markets are already leading and they have 5G network availability. China and Korea actually have 70% plus of their devices which they ship annually are already on 5G. They have a large base already sitting on 5G. India has around 35 to 40 million out of total 500 million smartphone users. Around 35 to 40 million are on 5G. And India shipped around 26 million in 2021. This is supposed to go out to about 100 million in next 2 years. And all this, mind you, all this without any 5G network being in the country. So consumers are buying 5G devices. They can't use or utilize the 5G services. Now, there are many reasons, and we have done that last year as well. We'll go into those reasons and some of the other stuff as well. But of course, as 5G, a new 5G SoC always brings in other use cases as well. It improves the overall performance of the device. And that's one of the major reasons why the vendors and the brands are using 5G SoC. And of course, it's a noble cause. You are making consumers very future-proof as well. So even if somebody doesn't replace a device for the next 2 years, they'll be ready as and when the networks roll out. And all in all, this 5G device availability and the user base will be very crucial building block in the whole 5G rollout ecosystem. So we'll discuss, and today's discussion will be focused around that how 5G devices and what are the challenges and the issues around how 5G devices will be a very crucial building block in all the rollout, with the network rollout, the telcos and everyone. But 5G devices need to be there because you need to use the services on something, and that will be the devices. Joined by a very august panel today, and I'll introduce each one for you. I'm joined by Mr. Sanmeet Singh Kochhar. He's Vice President for India and MENA at HMD Global. Sanmeet, very welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Navkendar.
I'm also joined by Mr. Navnit Nakra. He's CEO India region for OnePlus. Very warm welcome.
Thank you, Navkendar and the ET team. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And lastly, I'm joined by Mr. Madhav Sheth. He's Vice President Realme. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, without wasting too much time, we'll just get into the question, and we have a long list of questions, very interesting discussion we're supposed to have. So if you remember, this August panel was there, all of us were there last February as well. We last spoke in about a year back in February 2021. And I'll maybe start with Navnit. How has your outlook, about the 5G devices changed since then? It's been about 12, 13 months. We have seen supply challenges. We have seen market moving up because of the supply and some of the demand also coming in at the mid-premium to the premium end of the market. Are you more optimistic about the trends and the use cases of 5G coming in, or consumers are still being forced to buy 5G because most of the stuff around 20,000 plus is 5G? What's your outlook on that?
All right. So Navkendar, for us at OnePlus, we've always seen a very positive potential with the prospects of 5G technology. And we continue to feel so in 2022, just so we felt in 2021. All key stakeholders from smartphone brands, telco partners, chipset providers, as well as policymakers play an important role in building this 5G ecosystem space collectively. And as you're aware, over the last 1 year or more have been working very hard towards the same. At OnePlus, we are always looking forward to immense opportunities and benefits that a community will gain from experiencing 5G tech in the coming future. And that's the reason why we've been bringing 5G smartphones across all categories in the India market, enabling our community to be future ready. So in a nutshell, extremely excited, very positive and buoyant about the outlook, even in 2022. Back to you, Navkendar.
Thank you. I'll take you up on a small thing there. Since OnePlus as a brand has already committed that all the devices which we will be launching will be 5G, considering the cost pressures, which all the brands are under, for the past year and a half, do you think that's impacting some of your innovation capabilities around the Nord series and below? Because mass of the market still lies below 15, 20,000. So, we'll come to the question when the affordability will be there. But do you think cost pressures are really affecting some of your decisions?
Well, I think on the contrary, Navkendar, our intent at OnePlus has always been to bring great value for amongst the greatest specs. So interesting you bring about the Nord series, which, as you're aware, is the mid-affluent category. And we are very happy to share right now with you and the viewers that our recently launched mid-segment 5G phone, which is the OnePlus Nord CE2, is actually at the 23,999, 24,999 price bracket. And it is seeing some phenomenal success, not only from a community point of view, but also from an adoption of 5G point of view. So on the contrary, we are seeing great adoption even at the mid-tier segment, which is closer to around 20 to 23,000 rupees.
And Madhav, I'll pose the same question to you. About a year, how is your outlook about 5G and we'll come to a specific question later that 5G versus 4G, some brands are still, they believe that specs and non-specs and other stuff, but otherwise adoption trend, consumer buoyancy, do you feel that consumers are more willing to listen to 5G story, or that's just there on the device?
Thank you very much, Navkendar. I think pretty much bullish from the last year itself. And what we anticipated last year that 5G is going to be the in thing. And the market has responded in the similar way. People want to be future ready. People want to have their 5G on their hand before even the 5G services are rolled out. Because 5G, they have understood one thing, and all thanks to all the media fraternity and the guys like you, people have understood that 5G is not just about the services. 5G is also about the chipset and the advantages or the host of benefits what it brings along with it. So there's no wrong in being, future ready. So I think 5G is definitely right now the people is something what they are looking forward for.
And Sanmeet, I'll come to you. Where does 5G figure in the value equation for the consumer? Do you believe that the consumer has really, carrying on to the same question, has evolved in terms of 5G or is wiser now in terms of that when making a purchase decision, really at the moment of truth? Because should I spend more money on a 5G device, which has arguably some of the lower specs, or a fully spec'd out 4G device? And obviously, we know the price segments, 80% of the market lies still below 15,000 rupees. We are seeing an ASP gone up, but that's because of supply pressures. How do you view that? Where is the, 5G has entered the value equation or still at the outside there?
So excellent question, Navkendar, and thanks for the opportunity. It's great to see this platform as a learning opportunity and to interact with you and with my peers from the industry. So coming to this, so one is that if we look at above a certain price band, and I'm right now talking about the India market, above a certain price band, we see that most of the devices are already 5G, but there is a price bracket, let's say between 14 to 20K, wherein you would see 5G devices as well as 4G devices. And, and therein lies the question that if you buy a 5G device, you get certain, benefits which are associated with 5G, which as of now will take some time before it becomes mass in terms of the 5G service availability. Whereas if you buy a 4G device, you get some other benefits in terms of, the right or some better specs, which is also a very important factor especially in a market like India, which is, in my view, very commoditized, where people are looking at every purchase, in terms of what is the specs that they are getting, what RAM, what camera, what is the internal memory, what is the screen, the different aspects that they look at when they are purchasing. So there are different consumers and there are different trends that we have seen. In this price segment, we have seen a set of consumers who are going for 5G devices. However, there's a big set of consumers which also looking for a 4G device with a better specs, right? That's how I have seen. But at the same time, what people are looking at is to be have their device as future ready, which means that the device needs to be when the 5G service comes, their device needs to be ready at that time with that capability, so that they can get the maximum, or they can leverage the potential of 5G, which is going to be there across consumer, across businesses, and across industries. So people are looking to drive that aspect as well. And we at HMD Global have always been focused on making that device future proof, because as I said, the market is so commoditized, and our proposition always has been that how you can be future proof, because even on our devices at, let's say, around 10-11,000 price band, we offer 2 operating system upgrades and 3 years of monthly security updates and 5G network across the device that we have launched, which is available across different bands. So that is something that as a trend that we see in India. However, with the 5G auction coming up, and there were some announcements in the budget which our Honorable Finance Minister presented last month, and they are saying that we'll have, probably in a few months time, we'll have the auction and the bands would be out, and hopefully by 2022-23 financial year, we'll have the 5G services getting rolled out. And I see this trend moving very quickly, where people would be more and more keen on buying a 5G device so that they can be future ready.
Yeah, thanks for giving us a timeline from your side as well, that you also feel that it will be to 2023 financial year, unlike some of the more bullish, some of my colleagues in the market. I'll stick with you and I'll ask you a question that, how do you see other markets panning in terms of that? For example, UAE almost is full 5G now. They have 5G availability, right? So you can use a 5G device there. But in those markets, consumer obviously would be asking, so how are brands like yourself trying to tackle that through the open market, or still through, telco stuff, or 5G is forcing you to change some of the tax and give the consumers really faster, upgrade some of the upgrade options from their current 4G devices?
Yes. So again, excellent point. And see, some of the markets globally are slightly ahead of the curve in terms of 5G adoption. You mentioned a couple of markets right at the beginning. I would also say US and Europe, wherein, which are largely driven by telcos, and we see 5G adoption at a much faster pace as compared to some of the emerging markets. Even in UAE, the 5G is coming up. However, there are 2 or 3 aspects that I want to talk about in terms of the UAE market. So if I were to talk a little bit about the network without getting into too much technicals, see, right now we are seeing what is called the non-standalone solution, which means the core is still 4G and they put up the radio, which is 5G, and that is the service which is available. And right now, as we speak, operators are looking at and testing the full complete 5G standalone solution, and that is when the big change would come up. So that is the first point in terms of the how network is there technically and how that is going to move forward. That is one. Second is in terms of testing, and we work very closely with operators across the world. And like there was testing on voice over VoLTE or voice over Wi-Fi, now we are testing with the operators voice over NR, which is voice over new radio. So, it's like equivalent of voice over 5G network. So that is again getting tested. So it will be available in mass in different markets, right? And the third point, which is again a very important point over here, is the price of the 5G network. So in UAE, as things stand right now, there hasn't been any difference in terms of data cost between a 4G network and a 5G network. But of course, we need to keep in mind that in UAE, the prices of data are significantly higher than what it is in India. So it could be very different. Now coming to the last and most important point in terms of consumers. And again, we see the same situation, even in terms of consumers, that when we are going, there is a certain price band in which there is that range in which both 4G and 5G devices are available, and there are still consumers who are keen to buy a 4G device which better other aspects on the device rather than everyone going for a 5G device at that point. But of course, it is significantly more as compared to what it is in an emerging market, where 5G is still coming up. So the conclusion here is that both 4G and 5G are going to coexist for the next few years. It's not that 5G is going to be there and going to replace 4G totally.
Yeah, thanks for giving us a view from those markets. Navnit, carrying on the same thread, do you think, for example, we believe there'll always be around for 50 to 200 million people in India who will always have a only voice use case. That will always be there, right? So we can never have 130 1.3 billion people on smartphone. Do you think 4G and 5G, and most of it will depend on, as Sanmeet pointed out, on even if we see the devices of 5G, lots depends on what's the access cost of 5G, because end of the day, if access cost is not affordable, then all of us is a moot point that he's carrying a 5G device and using 4G services. How do you view this? Do you think, obviously, are you working with telcos and other stuff, making this case, or telcos, do you think in your interaction are conscious of this fact that that's important? Obviously, their network costs will be very high to when they implement it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Also, I have to admit, a complex question to answer. So I'll try breaking it into a few parts. So Navkendar, first, in terms of purchase of 5G phones, I think Madhav and even Sanmeet spoke about it. Consumers who are very aware, most parts of India today, who are well-read and who are spending, whether it's a $200 device or a $700 device, they want to be future ready, and we have spoken about it. Number two, I think when people get to the upgrade cycle, Navkendar, they feel that maybe it is better to be on a future ready device in this upgrade cycle because it is a little closer to the news which is coming out in the ecosystem of readiness of, I would say, 5G. Having said that, India is also a very value-driven market. So we still believe, and I personally believe that the sentiment that Sanmeet shared, that we will continue to have two tracks, one of consumers who will be on 4G for a while, and a bunch of consumers, maybe a little more, I would say, aware customers around the top 100 to 200 cities, which may make the flip to a 5G even without the services not being there. I think you also touched upon a question on what's happening in the other markets. So India today is not the decoupled market, either in terms of information or in terms of connectivity to get what's happening around the world. So the feedback is already seeping in. People are using IoT services, whether it's home IoT, agri IoT, looking at how 5G is helping pack more data on that spectrum is already hitting the more mature users. And I would say from our own learnings, we've found a case in point towards people using, the 5G users using less Wi-Fi and spending practically 1.5 to 2 hours more on cloud gaming, or an hour and a half more on augmented reality apps more compared to 4G users. So I think when the connected Indian sees what's happening in the world, she or he is aware that yes, 5G packs in more insight for me. But having said that, this information is not democratized right now because 5G is not here. So I believe that it will be a step function. Some people will continue to enjoy the 4G services for the right reasons, and some people will take the early leap. In terms of having a definite outlook, very difficult for me to look into a crystal ball and say that, 4 years, 5 years down the line, there's a complete shift. But Navkendar, it will also happen when every aspect of 5G is well understood and utilized. Because India is a market which wants to ask, how much am I getting worth my device and the ecosystem? Number two, when applications start or the ecosystem starts powering up on 5G. So today, the IoT ecosystem is not that well connected or not flashing those light bulbs as you would see in the 5G era. And once that starts happening, people are going to wake up and say, you know what, I need to move there. And that's when a large portion of the India consumer community will make a move. But for the time being, I think fair and easy answer to say that we're going to see the 4G and the 5G track coexisting for a while.
All three of you on a spot right now before I move to the next segment of our questions. Very short. Navnit, tell me, when do you think it'll hit 15,000 and below?
No comments. There has to be democratization of technology. And in all honesty, my only comment is, I think a lot of things need to happen before it brings to the most affordable price point. And why just 15,000 and below, less than that? But right now, no comments on when that is happening.
Let's say 10, 12,000, depending on our rupees not doing very well. But when do you really see it hitting the mass segment of the mass 80%, 75% of the market?
We already have to bring it down because we have seen the adoptions of 5G handsets is not just because of the services, as I said. So we have already seen the adoption now. Like I think my friends like Navnit, they said about Nord CE2. I think we have seen that brands like about 800 euros or $800 also bringing phones around $400. So I think it's all about the consumption. India has been a high consumption economy. So in any given point of time, I believe that basically when we see a high consumption, it's all about economies of scale. When economies of scale comes, definitely we bring the prices in. So I think Realme has also done the similar things where Realme has a phone which is GT2, which is a 5G phone, high-end phones, which we are going to supposed to launch, which is around 800 euros, like 50,000-60,000 rupees phone, bringing it down to around 12,000 rupees. So I think Realme soon will have this product portfolios in the place. So definitely we are here as an ecosystem player. It's as I said in the previous conversation, is a 360-degree approach. It's not just an approach from the brand. It's an approach from the brand, from the compliance, from the government, from the operators. Everybody has to pull in together to bring this 5G as a reality and the IoT ecosystem at the same time. So I think, yes, as a brand, I think what we are doing is bringing more and more 5G affordable devices, making sure that we democratize 5G.
And I'll come back to you on this IoT piece. Sanmeet, before that, what do you think? When do we see it happening?
Yeah, look, Navkendar, the way I look at it, see, as things stand right now, there is a difference, and there's a significant difference in the chipset price of a 4G chipset and a 5G chipset, right? And that's what is causing that's one of the key factors which is causing the price difference. Now, I can't speak on behalf of our chipset providers, but what I can say is that as things stand right now, there is, because of this chipset price difference, there's going to be a difference in the price of a 4G device and an equivalent 5G device. And we have always said that we want to do business in a more sustainable manner. So it's a function of, how the chipset prices evolve. And that, again, to an extent is a function of demand and supply as well. And you know that, again, without talking too much about the chipset suppliers, we have seen that, one of the chipset suppliers had moved completely into 5G. And then there are other chipset suppliers who are moving into 5G. And you mentioned earlier, there is this demand and supply gap, which is in the chipsets itself between 4G and 4G chipsets, as well as earlier in the 5G chipset market as well. So that is also going to impact the prices of the 5G chipset and 5G phones, therefore. So, like I said, it's a function of two things: how there is scale in 5G devices and how the chipset prices come down, and second is how well is everybody able to manage this transition between 4G and 5G, and is able to answer this question that how soon is this transition going to happen, because that is going to determine the balance between demand and supply. And to add to that complication, there has been this lockdowns, and there have been some COVID cases in some of the eastern markets in the world, which is complicating the situation even more. So it needs to be the right balance. And once we attain that and we get to that scale, the chipset prices come down and we see the price of the 5G devices coming down.
Madhav, if you can help us understand. So one of the things is, which we spoke about, that 5G access is going to be important. Now, one of the reasons which has been given by the consumer that use a lot of Wi-Fi at home, broadband penetration is not so good because they don't have confidence in the 4G system enabled on their IoT devices at home. And that will really, moving beyond the smartphone, do you think the major driver for the consumer and possibly for these categories as well, and I'm talking about smart homes, smart lighting, security, surveillance cameras, so on and so forth. Yeah, people are buying, but it's not, it's not en masse. So do you think that 5G is going to be one pivotal, moment for them when really you start getting 500, 600 Mbps without depending or need of a broadband, and then really start seeing the uptake of these categories as well?
Definitely. I think it's all about the intent and about the usage. We use Wi-Fi routers at home because basically we have a peace of mind that basically we won't be charged for data apart from the certain cost. And I think with 4G and 5G being democratized over a period of time in terms of usage as well, I believe it will be extremely important that people will be start using 5G because it's also about ecosystem. Now, when I'm traveling or doing anything as such, I think 5G, without the 5G, it would be very difficult to control that ecosystem. So definitely people have to be baptized to move towards 5G on that ecosystem. And over a period of time, more the usage, more the democratization, more the services would be democratized and more it would be more cheaper for the people to, adopt the 5G. But having the 5G would be a must, or it would be like, yes, it would be in the phone in the near future, because that's how you'll be able to control your ecosystem, your smart homes, smart cars, or smart TVs. Everything would be smart and conventional, which are currently conventional, would be moving to smart. So I think this definitely 5G would be an in thing for us.
You have to pinpoint one specific category which can really, see a leap in adoption because of 5G. What would they, out of, for example, maybe eSIM on wearables? I'm just thinking out loud. Smart lighting is not done well in India because lighting is done only once when you make the home or you just replace them after every 2 years. Surveillance cameras, yes, people are buying, but not, not like me. I have 6 cameras at home controlled by my phone, but not everybody is doing that. But which is the one category, if I have to ask you, which can really make use of this, or the total smart home solution is missing?
Smart TVs and smart audios and smart wearables. I think these three categories, not one, but these three categories would be one of the biggest categories in adoption of moving towards 5G. Right now, even we have seen the great adoptions in 4G. But I think over a period of time, we will see that basically these three categories will be very predominant even in the 5G era as well.
Navnit, what do you feel about this? Since OnePlus has also seen entry into IoT categories. What do you feel about?
I completely echo Madhav. I think smart TV may end up being the biggest beneficiary at the home. And what COVID has accelerated, Navkendar, for all of us is this entertainment at home, the gaming at home, education at home, connectivity at home. So I have a feeling with the 5G adoption, there's going to be a significant reduction in latency, a better connection density, and the traffic capacity network utilization is going to be so much better that the entire ecosystem around the family set of devices, starting with the smart TV, will come into play. And I would again say, being a country of many countries that we are, the younger youth segment are going to attach more and more game controllers for cloud level gaming, multiplayer gaming out there with multiple devices. It's going to be there. I think smart speaker is also something that I believe is going to take a much better, I would say, space in our life, because with the, I would say, the Alexas and the Google smart speakers and many other smart speakers of the world, I think that connectivity and speaking back, voice assisted, transactions or instructions are going to become very popular. So I would believe smart TVs and smart speakers, apart from, of course, eSIM and home surveillance that you spoke about, is going to be there. But my bet is on smart TVs in a big way.
Let me seek a clarification. When you say smart speaker, you say the device or the conversational computing capability of all the devices around us?
Well, both, because at the end of the day, Navkendar, just like you said, you may have a device controlled set of cameras or equipment out there, but the conversation flow today is moving away from tap to voice much better. So if my network optimization on 5G is much better, latency is much lower, it's going to facilitate that as well. So not just intelligent speakers, but smart speakers are possibly going to see a much better push, because it will not be the day where you say, hello speaker, and the response comes back after 2.5 milliseconds. You want to get that out almost instantly.
And voice also allows you to democratize so many services. You don't need to be
very true
in the sense and English speaking, it really allows for that. Taking on this point, and all of these services are important. I mean, obviously, enterprises will be one of the first users of 5G and really adoption of that, and they will create the services which will be used by the consumer. But in a market like India, we have not seen, I mean, telcos are not really the drivers of devices. How important for 5G is working with the telcos for faster adoption and really put the base of 5G there. We have a telco who's trying to do something around it, but really how important, Navnit, if you can take a stab at it and then we move around the table.
Navkendar, very difficult for me to comment on behalf of telcos, but I think from my personal perspective, not just the telcos, but all key stakeholders, the brands, telco partners, policymakers will play a significant role in building the 5G ecosystem. So I think while a few telcos are taking the lead and the communication to consumers, enterprise is good, I have a feeling the ecosystem, like Madhav said, the 360 degree has to come into play for faster adoption. Right.
What I actually meant was that telcos will obviously know their role and they'll obviously be the bedrock of everything. But we, as device providers and the hardware providers have to. So what I meant was how important it is for you guys to work with the telcos. Is it important, or the open market will still work for even for 5G in India, and we can depend on that?
From my perspective, a little early to comment. I think the entire ecosystem is important of Kendra, but happy to learn from Sanmeet and Madhav on their views.
Yeah, if I may come in over here. So I think, so first of all, principally speaking, I think consumer price, the overall, the high-speed connectivity would be critical to drive adoption, but at the same time, the consumer price value equation, it needs to be, very well calibrated, which would then lower the barrier to adoption. So this is something where, telco would need to play an important role. That is one from a consumer point of view. And that at HMD Global, we announced a tie-up earlier last year with Reliance Jio in terms of, trying to remove the barrier to entry to 4G devices from 2G users. And that is something that has worked really well for both of us. And again, this kind of collaboration would need to happen between the carriers as well as the device manufacturers. But I think this is slightly early right now. What we need to before that, and I spoke from a consumer point of view because that was the discussion, but before that, I think we need to first get to a larger ecosystem where the government, along with the inputs from the industry, needs to share what would be the bands which would be available, and then once the auction happens, then we need to also work with the carriers to see how the testing is happening, and what kind of services can be rolled out on the devices. That is one. Second, I also wanted to just link it to the previous point that you raised, Navkendar, on the IoT. And there is this whole CPE or customer premise equipment which is going to come in. So therefore, instead of having those cables which are there everywhere for broadband and for Wi-Fi, that's a big opportunity that when 5G comes in, there could be a SIM card or an eSIM which could be there, or an eSIM based device which telcos can provide, which will also change considerably the way data is getting consumed in households as well as in corporates. So that's another use case which device manufacturers can work along with the telcos.
Madhav, from your experience from the European markets, one from the telco point of view, any interesting use cases, as Sanmeet also pointed out, any interesting use cases or devices which we can look forward to from Realme or from the industry, which can really make the consumer and adoption much faster?
I think consumers across India, Europe, they all are same. They are all looking for post-pandemic. They have one thing which have been very common across the world is they're looking for value for money devices, which means that basically they're looking, it's not about cheaper devices. They're looking for value for money devices, if I understood your question correctly. So what they're trying to look at it is that even if they're buying a €800 phone, they will not just buy because of a price tag or they can afford it. or it's just because of the logo behind the phone. They would buy the phone because if there's some innovation or disruption in the phone or some differentiation in the phone. So that's one thing which we have post-pandemic, what we have understood and identified across the world, and they all are same. At the same point of time, what Realme is trying to do is the same thing, that we have an entry-level smartphones, we have mid-rangers, and we have high-end phones. So we are trying to bring differentiation, innovation, and disruptions in all the three different price segments. And how we can do that? Because in the entry-level price segments, the most from entry-level mid-ranges we can bring is differentiation, but in the highest, definitely we can bring innovations and disruptions. So I think that's something what we are trying to do at this price point. But while going back to your question, yes, we are working with the operators very closely. Uh, but not for the bundles. Definitely because it's more about the consumption right now. In European markets, yes, we are working on the bundles. In the India markets, is more about the consumption economy, where we are more working on the open markets. And definitely we'll be giving more democratized 5G handsets, and we'll definitely look for an opportunity to cooperate with operators if in case required. But I believe Indian consumers are more towards leaning towards free SIM markets, where people would love to explore their own choices of the networks and roam around rather than just getting entangled with one of the operators. That's what we have identified as the differentiation point between the both of the markets.
Absolutely, that's true. I mean, Indian consumer legacy, wise, they don't walk into a telco store to buy a device. That's just not the case. And everyone has tried it for the past so many years. And last question, we've had a great discussion. Any specific policy asked from the government which can really make this more broad-based, both in terms of smartphone or other device categories? Sanmeet, Navnit, let's start with you and then we can go around the table.
A great question. I think Navkendar, as we continue to observe the developments, I think we are very positive that the government is taking every measure to support and foster policy and programs which will benefit the Indian consumers. I think from our perspective, we see a lot of incredible work happening on the Digital India program, which has truly driven internet penetration across the country. And that is a major metric when it comes to adoption of any new technology. Similarly, we are confident that the collaborations that the industry is seeing with government and feeding in and feeding out in terms of having a sandbox approach or having several collaboration is going to bring more 5G technology. So on our side, no specific ask, but we are all, with open ears, listening into all the positive work which is happening.
Sanmeet?
Yeah, so three things I would say, Navkendar. First one is not directly related to devices, but more on the ecosystem, and that's expediting the overall rollout of the 5G, which means getting the auction done and getting this out and as soon as possible. That's one. Second is the government has been, and our honorable Prime Minister has been very vocal on the Make in India, and I believe that it's not just a competition between companies, but it's a competition between countries and ecosystem. And right now we all know that a big part of this ecosystem exists in China, and I think it's important from a 5G point of view that the government looks at what can be done to bring a significant part of the ecosystem into India. And we just recently had the vision, the statement released by the METI. And again, there is this thinking around how we can get the chipset manufacturers into India. And then there is this PLI on sub $200 devices, but also then how can we bring in more focus, greater focus on bringing in 5G manufacturing into India and 5G capabilities into India. The third one, which I see as a big part, is there's greater awareness now around public data. And now, as we move forward, we know that almost everything related to our lives is on the phone. And therefore, the importance of privacy and security. And I see that the government is already focused on it, but I think it will be good if we can, as we move forward and put in 5G networks, have a clear policy and guidelines around data security and privacy.
Thanks, Sanmeet. Madhav, the last word to you. Any government asks?
No, I think government is pretty much doing on the right direction, probably because basically we have seen them bringing the ecosystems to India, making India initiatives, and at the same time digitalization of India. So I think on all the angles, I think government is trying to push up the things on the right angle. So they are very well aware of how the things are happening and what the things are shaping. When I speak to them, I think they are very well informed, very well aware on what directions they want to take and how they want to move ahead. And I think that's something which gives me more confidence while we are talking about this particular subject. That basically, while we are talking about this subject, equally, I believe the compliance, the government lawmakers, they are equally aware of this particular thing and they're equally understanding the business prospects and at the same time helping initiating Make in India prospects in a bigger way. So yeah, that's pretty much okay.
Thanks, Madhav. That was a very fruitful discussion and very productive. The optimism about 5G is palpable. You can feel it. 5G devices will play a very pivotal role in actually giving the consumer one device around which it can, she can create the ecosystem of devices at home. And as our panelists also pointed out, they are working towards bringing more affordable devices. But obviously, external factors always, have some impact on the capability. But they are committed to doing that. Consumer will have a lot of options, even at mass markets as well. They still have some. Some of the other markets are creating some use cases. These brands will bring them here. Government is doing a lot of stuff, and I think when we speak probably in 2023, we'll have 5G in some of the markets in India, hopefully, or at least some of the major areas in the urban markets, and we should be able to see the fruits of what kind of services are being built around 5G. Gentlemen, it's been absolute pleasure to speak to you once again, and thank you so much for joining us and giving your valuable inputs. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you, Navkendar and Team ET. It was wonderful being here.
Thank you, gentlemen, for delving deeper into the discussion and for giving some very interesting takeaways. Now it's time for a wrap. Stay tuned, everyone, for closing remarks.